Welcome to Interpersonal Toastmasters. Thank you so much for joining this meeting today. Today, we have a very special meeting called Connect with Storytelling. I request you to mute your mic if you are not speaking, and please turn on your cameras so that we can see you. Now with that, let me introduce our presenter, Jim Denson. So let me share something about Jim. Jim Denson's path towards self-acceptance began in childhood with his sister walking him to the local library. It was there he developed a love of reading and learning that has only grown over time. A graduate of Colgate University, Jim has enjoyed an impactful career as a paralegal, advocating for disabled clients at Social Security hearings. The demands of his job helped him to overcome a years-long debilitating stutter, and his 8 years with Toastmasters have shaped his development into an effective speaker, as evidenced by the Advanced Communicator Bronze, ACB, he earned in 2018. Jim is also a well-regarded speech evaluator. Of all his accomplishments, however, Jim is most proud of his hard-earned ability to move and be moved by other people. Please join me in welcoming Jim Denson. Jim, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so very much, Jamal. Thank you to Interpersonal Toastmasters for sponsoring tonight's event. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. There are 3 things that I want you to take away tonight from my remarks, and I'll lay them out now, and I'll come back to them as my presentation continues. The first takeaway: your life is the most powerful source of your stories. Second, you must believe that your story and you are worthy of being heard and being told. And number 3, you and only you can tell your story. Now, the word story in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is defined as an account of an incident or an event. That's a very broad definition, but it works for my presentation tonight because, quite simply, my grandmother, Carthenia Miller, is the first storyteller I ever heard. If she wasn't telling stories about life growing up in rural North Carolina in the years of World War I and before, she would tell me how in the years before I was born, people with disabilities were rarely seen or heard. They were often locked away, avoided because of the fear, the embarrassment, or the grief of family members who really, while loving, may not have been understanding. Now, why does that resonate with me? Well, it resonates with me because when I was born 3 months prematurely, and that resulted in my developing cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a neurological condition that affects certain parts of the brain. How severe it is depends on what parts of the brain are impacted. For me, my case is fairly mild, and my cerebral palsy only affects the way that I walk. For the past 10 years or so, I've had to use a cane. And to describe the way that I walk without the cane, think back to, if you remember, an old sitcom from the 1970s called Sanford and Son. Red Fox a very beloved Black comedian. He played the title role, and he had kind of a waddle when he walked. Well, that's me without my cane. And it's to the point where if a turtle were to decide to race me, the turtle would probably win if I didn't have my cane with me. But one thing I really remember, one thing I really appreciate about my grandmother is that not only was she raising me, she was also raising my brother my brother Marvin and my sister Adrian. And Marvin's the middle child, and Adrian's the oldest. And she would tell me that in the aftermath of my birth and the difficulties that I had, loving relatives would say to her, listen, Carthia, it doesn't look like that kid is going to ever be independent. Are you sure? Are you sure that you really want to take on that burden? Maybe he'd be better off at a place that can better fulfill his needs. My grandmother, to her credit, would have nothing of it. No, my child, I'm going to make sure that my child has every possible chance to succeed. And that meant that I would have exposure to the therapeutic and the academic services at the Cerebral Palsy Center. It's in a place called Roosevelt, Long Island, and it's a town not too far from Rockville Center, where I grew up. It's there that I spent the formative years of my education and my schooling. I had wonderful, caring teachers, and I met some very good classmates who I still regard fondly to this day. But when there are siblings involved, there's always comparison, if not competition, between yourself and them. And with me, it was no different. I was comparing myself to them because they don't have disabilities. And one way in which it stood out for me, in going to this school, the Cerebral Palsy Center, I had to be bused every day to and from school from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. But I never got to see my classmates outside of school because things were so structured and they had to be so limited. And all of the kids on the bus lived in different towns. So it was hard to get together with my classmates. So while I would get to meet my brother's friends and my sister's friends on occasion, they never got to meet mine. So what this raised in me is it raised a sense of self-doubt. It raised the question, am I good enough? Can I make friends on my own? And that question haunted me because I didn't feel that sense of identity where when someone met me, they would say, oh, that's Jim. Instead of saying, that's Jim, that's Marvin's brother, that's Adrian's brother, that's Mrs. Miller's grandson. I needed a sense of identity for myself. And at that time in my life, I didn't think I had it. And I felt inferior to my brother and sister, even though I love them and they love me. I felt inferior to them. And that's a feeling that remained with me through the 9th grade. But one thing happened during that time, during those years. I got to meet my brother's friends and my sister's friends occasionally, and I liked practically everybody I met. They saw that I had a disability. They seemed to like me too. And I went to a few events around the community. And I got the sense, hey, I'd like some of this too. Maybe I can participate in some of this too. So around the 9th grade, I raised the idea with my overly protective grandmother. Hey, look, I love Southside. You know, I love basketball. Southside has a great basketball team. My brother played on the basketball team during his time at Southside High School. My sister was a star player during her time. She went to Queens College, and then she went on to a professional career in internationally for a few years. So I love basketball. And so I want to see if I can go to Southside High School. I would love it. That's a dream of mine. But there were many levels of bureaucracy that had to be considered. One, the Cerebral Palsy Center. As noted in the introduction, I had a stutter at that time, and it was a stutter born of a lack of self-confidence. So people at the school were worried. Would I be able to handle the rigors of high school with classmates who potentially had never experienced somebody with a disability? But I was able to at least prevail and convince my grandmother and school personnel, okay, let's give it a try. Let's let Jim dip his toe in the water. So sophomore year, I split my time between Calhoun High School in the morning, where I would take gym class, Spanish, and sociology. And then in the afternoon, I'd be bused back to the Cerebral Palsy Center. But in the mornings, before I got to Calhoun High School, before that first session, the questions ran amok in my mind. What's going to happen when, because in gym, we probably have to wear shorts. And I have all these scars going down my legs because of all the surgery I've had. What are they going to think about when they see that? What are they going to think about when they see that when I'm walking, my left leg just swings out, like way out from my body? What are they going to think when I'm very tall and I'm hard to miss? When I fall down, I'm not going to be able to hide. What are they going to think? What are they going to think when they see that I can't run as fast as they can? How are they going to look at me? All those questions were burning. But luckily, I didn't have to worry about it because they treated me very well without fail. I cannot remember one negative experience from the students I interacted with at Calhoun High School. And I'm so glad to have had that experience. But it wasn't the full experience that I wanted because, again, having to be bused back to the Cerebral Palsy Center and not having my own car, my own transportation, I couldn't get to see the Calhoun students outside the school. So I never really got to know them more deeply than when I saw them in class. I wanted to change that. And so negotiations were ongoing during that sophomore year. And luckily, I got my wish. I was able to spend my junior year full time at my home district at Southside High School, the high school that's been standing since 1892. My dad went to Southside High School. My mom went to Southside High School. And of course, like I said, my brother and sister did too. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. And the most enduring memory of those 2 years for me, as far as my self-confidence, as I said, I love basketball. So I was in my senior year, the equipment manager for the varsity basketball team. And during that year, I just brought up to the coach, Mr. Reed, I said, hey, look, Mr. Reed, listen, I know this might sound strange, but I would love to get into a game and just play a game, even if only for a few minutes, a real game. What do you say? Well, Jimmy, we would have to talk to the varsity coach, Mr. Bigelow, of course, and we'd have to ask the team members what they think. Well, those conversations happened. The coach said fine. The players all said fine. And so The last game of the season, my senior year, February 16, 1981, capacity crowd at Southside High School, of a crowd of about 300 students and faculty and townspeople were all gathered at the high school gym as the Southside Cyclones, my team, played the Mineola Mustangs, their team. We were ahead by 20 points, so there was no way we were going to lose the game. A minute left to go in the game. Mr. Reed puts me in. Now I'm 6'5", and I'm hard to miss, like I said. My legs felt like jelly, and they felt very heavy, but I was so excited and nervous to be out there at the same time. I wasn't going to let the moment pass. So there were a couple of times down the court. The first time down the court, my teammate Tommy Kay, the point guard, was looking for me, trying to get me to shoot the ball and hopefully make it. I catch the ball. I shoot it with my left hand. The ball doesn't go in. It might not have even hit the rim. So I'm going back down the court. I said to myself, oh, what did I get myself into? How embarrassing. The crowd moaned out of compassion. But Tommy Kay was undeterred. The next time down the court, they're looking for me again. Get Jim the ball. Let Jim shoot. So he found me at the top of the key, about 20 feet away from the basket, right in line. I take a dribble. I do the same left-handed jump shot as before. This time, it goes in. The crowd explodes. I couldn't believe it. The crowd explodes. My teammates were all patting me on the back. They're all over me. Oh, Jim, congratulations. Yeah. And I couldn't remember anything but just a big smile. I smiled so much it hurt my cheeks. That's how big a smile I had. The import of that experience, it might sound trivial. Yeah, it's only a basketball game. And yet it was only 2 points. And it was the only basket I would ever score in school. Okay, fine. But it meant the world to me psychologically. It told me that I belonged. It told me that I fit in. And it told me also that whatever would confront me in college at Colgate University, and then professionally and personally after that, I'd be okay. And I needed to know that. So I'm grateful for that experience. And that experience is also possible for you, because you and we all, because we're human beings, and by virtue of being human beings, there are at least four themes that we practically each have experienced at some point in life that can be the source of a powerful story. One is love. And thinking about love, you're thinking about maybe your parents or your friends or your partners. And one of the things that you may be thinking about is, how do I meet the expectations of the people I love and the people who love me? But at the same time, if I have to be myself and stand up for myself, if there's a conflict there, how do I deal with that? That's the love part. You might also experience joy in certain parts of your life. That test that you've been studying for the last 6 months in school, you get it back and you ace it. How do you express that joy? Do you run around the house waving the exam like a flag and smiling and hooping and hollering and singing and jumping up and down? Or do you just chill because, well, I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. I want to be modest about it. How do you express joy and do so in a classy way? Third experience, hope. Those professional goals that you set for yourself or that your parents planted the seed for in your mind, How close are you to achieving them? How realistic are they? Do you have to change course because things don't go the way you planned? Could it be that you might have overestimated your ability to meet whatever you're hoping for? That's another sense of conflict that could be good material for a story. And finally, you can expect that you might have experienced some sort of fear in your life. For example, the people I love and who love me, my family, my friends, my partners. What if I lose their love and their regard and their support? What will I do about it? How do I get it back? If life slaps me in the face and knocks me down, am I going to be able to get up and move on with my head held high? These are all things: love, joy, hope, fear. We've all experienced some sort of version of these four things at some point in our lives. And since we've done it, we have a potential story that we can tell. Think of the great speeches that you've heard in your life, for example. I'm reminded of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the last speech he ever gave in his life, the mountaintop speech. He tells of an event in 1958. He wrote his first book. I believe the name of the book was Strive Toward Freedom. He's in Harlem, New York, signing the book. A woman comes up to him in Harlem, New York City, stabs him in the chest. It's a deep stab wound, and it almost hits his aorta, the main artery. He's recovering in Harlem Hospital, and he's reading letters from around the world wishing him well. Of all those letters from dignitaries, princes, and kings, the one that stood out to him the most was from a girl, a nameless girl, a girl whose name nobody knows. She was a white girl in the 9th grade at White Plains High School. Dr. King, I just want to tell you that I'm sorry about what happened to you. And although it shouldn't matter, I want to tell you that I'm a white girl. But I also want to tell you that I read in the newspaper that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I want you to know that I'm so glad that you didn't sneeze. What that story tells me from Dr. King's speech is that even for an iconic figure like Dr. King, an ordinary everyday person can do something or say something that can move him to the point where he was moved. And you have that power too. You may not come from royalty, you may not come from wealth. No matter where you come from, you have the ability to have that impact on other people, no matter how humble, by your ability to tell a story. So we go back to the first takeaway. Your life is the most powerful source of your story. It's all there for you. The second takeaway, you must believe that you and your story are worth hearing and telling. But how do you do that? How do you tell a compelling story and tell it so that it can get to people? Well, in my experience, I think the best way to do that is when you're describing something that happened to you, something you saw, something you did, heard, or felt. Put them right in the middle of the action. Don't do a whole lot of introduction. Just put them right there, right in the middle. If you got yourself a dog, for example, for the first time, a cute little Boston Terrier, right? Something like that. Tell us what it's like. Okay, yeah, we know the breed and everything else. You can tell us that. Tell us what color it is. Tell us what he looks like. You know, that dog has been described as a tuxedo dog or something like this. How does the dog move? What's the dog's personality? What does the dog feel like when he jumps in your arms and you're cuddling him and you're hugging him? What does the fur sound like or feel like? What does it make you feel like? What do you feel inside? Tell us. Tell us. Put us right in the middle there, because because what you have to do in order to tell compelling stories, you have to paint pictures with your words, and you have to put the listener right in the middle so that they're right there with you. So that's one of the things that you can do, and that's one of the ways in which you can tell impactful stories. And that's how you show that, yeah, your story is important and worthy of being heard, and that you are worthy of telling it because of the way you've expressed your humanity to a fellow human being. The third takeaway: you and only you can tell your story. My question: why would you want anybody else to tell your story? It's the ultimate in self determination, to for lack of a better term. You always want to tell your own story if you can. And for example, if you cooked a great chicken dinner that you've been planning for the last week, why would you want somebody else to tell you, or to tell your story about how you had to marinate the chicken parts first in Italian dressing and then olive oil, and then hit it on both sides with seasoned salt and then paprika and then cracked black pepper, and then you cut some onions and you cut them into rings and you put them in a hot grill pan, and I mean a hot grill pan, so that the onions get the right color to them for a couple of minutes. And then you put the chicken parts in, let them get the grill marks on them, maybe 3 minutes aside, and then stick it in the oven for 45 minutes at 350 degrees. But it's not over yet when the cooking is done, because you have to wait another 45 minutes for the meat to rest and so that the juices can collect. But once that knife and fork go through that meat, boy, you're going to be so glad that you waited, because it's heaven on a plate. If you accomplish something like that, why would you want to have anyone else tell that story? That happened to you. You can take us into the kitchen. You can take us into the oven. You can let us know what it tasted like. You have it in you. So now that you know that your life is the most powerful source of your stories, and now that you know that you have a compelling way of telling it, and that you are qualified to tell it, and now that you know that it's only you who are going to tell it, the only questions left now are: when do I tell it? Oh, well, do I tell it? When do I tell it? How do I tell it? That's the question that we answer as we try to develop into the best speakers and the best storytellers that we can be. I encourage you to begin the journey, and if you're already on it, to continue. I thank you deeply for the time, and I'll be glad to take whatever questions or reactions you may have. Thank you so much.
Does anybody have any questions?
Jamo,
Yes, Vivian.
This might sound like a silly question to younger people, but I'm 70 years old.
Okay.
The question now, when I want to tell my story, is Jim, which story do I which story do I choose? I've been up and down, I've been to hell and back.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing is, depending on the kind of speech it is, it may have more than one story. But depending on the time limit, like most Toastmaster speeches are 5 to 7 minutes, right? So there is a time limitation. So when you're doing a speech like that, you may want to pick the one story that you think fits most with your theme and what you're talking about. So whatever your speech title might be, and only you can choose that. You have to find a story that is relevant to what you're talking about. And if it's something that you're passionate about, if your speech is something that you're passionate about and something that you are knowledgeable about and that you know a lot about, that's where the authenticity is going to come from. That's where the realness of you is best likely to come out. So the story that you choose is up to you. You may try different ones and see which one feels the best for you. It's something in a way that can only be answered with experience, but don't let that stop you. If you give a Toastmaster speech and the story that you wanted to tell, it didn't quite land the way you wanted it to, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with giving the same speech at another point. There's no rule against that. And that's how people can develop. I've told uh, the same speech more than once, sure. Maybe not consecutively, but I've worked on it. I might have told it one time and then maybe a few months later tweaked it a little bit and come back and told another version of it again. The speech I told tonight, I've never told it to anyone before. And the story I told you, although most of the people at Toastmasters who I've given speeches to, they know that I have cerebral palsy, but I've never told them about this aspect of it. This was a first. I had never talked about my struggle before college, before becoming an adult. This was the first time, and I wanted to see how that story would land with people, and I hope that it did tonight. But to get back to your question, what story do you choose? It's up to you. It depends on your speech and how well it fits into your speech.
Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. And yes, it landed straight into my heart, halfway
Thank
around
you.
the world. Thank you. I
Thank
love
you.
you, Jim.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doris?
Jim,
Yeah, yes.
can we embellish the story, or it has to be completely true? Like, should we exaggerate certain things to make it more touching, or?
Well, I would say that I think the story has to be true. It has to be true. It has to be something that's happened to you. To talk about embellishing, like, for example, the emotions that I mentioned, the love, hope, fear, and joy. If you're expressing joy, you might maybe take a few liberties there. You might go a little overboard in facial expression. You might go a little overboard in terms of your gestures, but you would still have the integrity of your story intact. Okay. You might exaggerate a little bit in terms of physical movements. For example, if you're talking about some athletic pursuit that you engaged in, oh, my first time on a golf course, for example, and if you swung and missed, you might have only swung and missed by two by 2 inches. But if you want to exaggerate, you can do a big swing like you missed by 5 feet. You could do that, and it would still be okay. We would get the point that okay, golf didn't go very well when you first tried it. That's all. But the idea, what it is you are going to tell your story about, to me, I think it has to be true in order for it to be most real to people, and in order for you to be able to connect the way you want to. One suggestion that I would have is there are written resources all throughout Toastmasters. I'd recommend Toastmaster Magazine, for example. It recently went completely online. I can't point to specific issues, but if you look through them, almost every issue has something relative to a story or something that can be applied to storytelling. That's the first place I would go to read for suggestions. But again, like I said, when you have to give your own speech, no matter how many Toastmaster speeches you read, you hear, you study, do that all to your heart's content, no question. But when you have to give your speech, be yourself. Be yourself. Use your own language, simple, direct, and that paints a picture with the words. Now, in terms of spoken word stories, I'd like to recommend a radio program from NPR that comes on every week on Saturdays. It's called the Moth Radio Hour. And why that's important, I think, is, well, sometimes people are very skittish about hearing themselves on tape or hearing themselves speak. They may not like hearing themselves speak. Well, hear others speak. You're hearing others who are just like you. They're not, they're no better, no worse off than you are. Many of them are just normal people. And on one occasion, I heard this program on the Moth Radio Hour, and it was a story from a Toastmaster who I think was the winner in 2018. It was a guy from Singapore. I don't remember his name, but if I saw him, I would know what he looked like. He's a young guy. He was in his 30s. He was wearing a gray suit. And the winning story he told at the World Championships, it's the same story that was broadcast on the Moth Radio Hour. That happened a couple of years ago. So it can happen. Toastmaster speeches can get on the Moth Radio Hour. And in terms, again, of literature, stories that you can read from great writers. For me, being a Black person, I've always James Baldwin has always resonated with me. But you don't have to be Black to appreciate James Baldwin. Any novel, well, he's known mostly for his essays, but if you read his novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain, and look at the dialogue there, the conversations amongst people, that can give you a sense of what a story can be like. Because sometimes you'll be talking about a conversation you might have had with a friend or with a parent or with whoever. You want to change the voices. You want to convey your voice against their voice. And one way to do that is maybe to read a play or something along those lines, or read great literature that has dialogue in it, which can give you an idea, a sense of how to do that in a story, within a speech.
Thank you for all your suggestions. Great.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Jim? Deanna, you have a question? You want to put it on the chat? In the meantime, I have a question for you, Jim.
Yes.
How do I have story? But when I try to say it, it's going to be a long story. How do I say it in such a way that it's effective, powerful, potent, in a way that is condensed, and I am inspiring the people, and I'm inspired listening to the story?
Okay. What I would do there is hopefully you have time to prepare your speech and to prepare your story. And what I would say is that's an instance where I think writing things down is helpful. You have the contours of the story in your mind. Maybe you haven't written it down on paper yet, but the way it sounds in your head, it sounds like it's going to be long and involved. Okay, so write out all the ideas that you're thinking. Write it out, put it on paper, and have it out there. And when you see it, you're going to be able to edit those ideas. And when you edit those ideas, you want to think about, okay, what is it that I'm trying to convey here with this story? If I could put it in one word, what do I want the listener to take away from it? And then use a few sentences and then try to say what word best describes the idea that I conveyed in just those two sentences. Can I do it? And more likely than not, you probably can. So with a few simple words and simple ideas, that can help you to make the story more potent because it'll be more concentrated and shorter. And once again, you want to use simple and direct language. So you want to choose something that simple and direct language will be able to convey it more powerfully. So I would write down all the ideas in your head without limiting yourself. And then once you see it and once you have it down on paper and once you're editing it, what words come to mind that can express all those words? Chances are you'll find one word that might be able to express 2 or 3 ideas at once.
Yeah, I like that. And sometimes, yeah, go ahead. Hazel, you have a question. Hazel.
Hi, Jim.
Hello, Hazel. Thank you.
Jim, it was great hearing your speech tonight. You shared a lot of personal, pertinent information. And I liked when you mentioned authors that were great storytellers. For me, it has to be people that wrote memorable stories that
Right.
resonated with me. It has to be Maya Angelou, one of my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and Langston Hughes. My thing is that Toastmasters like personal stories. And to me, personal stories are not the easiest for me to tell because sometimes they kind of evoke very painful memories. I think although my childhood was a happy one in some instances, there's a lot of hard things I feel like I went through, and it's so hard for me to share that in a setting like Toastmasters. Maybe I could refer to something as an instance, but it's a struggle to really tell a personal story. So
Right.
how do I deal with that? And I know one time I told a story and you said I can talk about like the foods and different things like that. But I'm wondering, how do you make it interesting when you find it hard to talk about something really personal?
Okay. Thank you, Hazel, for the question. And I'm glad you asked it because I remember a presentation a few months ago, actually, this year, actually, Verity Price, the winner of the 2021 World Champion of Public Speaking, she was giving a presentation. And part of her presentation dealt with storytelling. And one of the things I think I remember her saying is that you're going to be dealing with strong emotion in some speeches. And when you do, you have to make sure that you are okay, or that you are complete with whatever the experience was or is that was so painful. You have to be over it to a certain degree in order to convey it effectively in a speech. Now, it doesn't mean that you're avoiding it or you're shoving it down below, but you have gotten to a point where you acknowledge it. Okay, it happened. It was painful. What can be learned from it? What have I learned from it? And what useful information can I give for someone else who might be going through the same thing? Because we never know what our listeners are dealing with. They may not tell us. And that's one of the fascinating things about public speaking and about storytelling. We never know who it is that we're impacting until they tell us. And they may never tell us, but we have to believe that what we're doing and the reason that we're doing it is because maybe we're helping that one person out there who heard it at the most important time in their lives. So I would definitely encourage you not to avoid the experience, maybe just go through it to get through it and see if there's anything valuable that you find in that experience that you learned that you can share with somebody else. And you don't have to if you don't want to. I mean, it's completely up to you. But I think some of the most impactful stories that people tell have been traumatic ones. And they've been able to overcome the trauma to the benefit of themselves and many other people. You know, each person has their own way of doing it. It may take you a long time, but I think it's worth it. Because one of the other things we're told in Toastmasters, be it in the speaking or leadership realm, do something that scares you, do something that's uncomfortable. That's where the growth comes. And sometimes it's a little bit painful, but more often than not, it's worth it.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Hazel.
Oh, those are really powerful words, Jim. Carol, before I call you Carol, Deanna has written her story and she wants me to read it out. Just give me 1 second. Let me see the story. Deanna, thank you for sharing your story. Let me read it out for you. Thank you, Toastmaster Madam. My name is Deanna. I was born July 9th, 1970. I went to the big White House, lived about 10 years there, but they won't help me with everything in life. I had a special walker on the sidewalk. I tried to make my legs work. After that, I had front 2 teeth gone as football player. They did give me a hard time. Dinner time also, I cried. It won't help me in bed as I got news. I have 3 brothers. I was 10 years. I was 10 years old in the public school. The students they would push my wheelchair down the hill and the manager called 911 ambulance to hospital. About 3 weeks in the hospital room. My mom gave me a lot of flowers. So that is really, thank you for sharing your story, Deanna.
Yeah, Deanna. Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your heart with us, Deanna, and the trouble that you have gone through. And that helps a lot. Deepa has one question before I call you, Carol. Deepa's question is, Deepa, do you want to say it? Or do you want me to just read it?
Say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have a lot. When we start thinking of a topic or a story that we want to talk about, a lot of ideas come to our mind, but sometimes I don't know which is a powerful story to share So what are some things that I have to consider before I start developing a story in mind based on a past incident, right? Which is, there are many things in life, right? So for me,
Right.
like,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
for me,
Well,
it's like, leaving my country and coming here for good, things like that, and the day that my son was born, and many things in life, right? So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you for the question. As many ideas as you just mentioned there, you could devote to a separate speech. Why not give a speech about you leaving the country? Why not about what it was like? What did you feel when your son was being born? There's a story there. And you could give a speech around that and have that be your story. There are many ways in which you can do it, but if you're considering your topic, well, it really depends on what it is your topic is. You first of all, you want to determine for yourself, why am I giving this speech? What do I want to accomplish? What takeaways do I want the listener to have? Okay. And once you determine that, then I think you can find what experiences are you going to talk about that'll be your story, that's going to put forward what theme you want to convey. What do you want your speech to be about? And what
So,
story is best going to help you get the message over
yeah.
to
So,
the listener in the way that you want to?
yeah, thanks for that. So
Sure.
you've actually probed me to think more about it. So if I were to talk about the story of leaving my motherland, it's mixed feelings, right?
Sure.
One hand, you're leaving behind all the familiar things, familiar places, everything familiar, and coming to a new land, which is going to offer a wide variety of opportunities. But then you're starting from scratch. You're learning to live there. You're learning how to get things, get your way around, how to drive and stuff
Mhm.
like that, right? So it's very interesting because
Yeah,
I was in my early 20s, but at the same time, um, there is some apprehension too. So that those
sure.
feelings is what I want to convey. So
Yeah,
what I want to convey is like more like when you try to venture something new, there's always one side of you saying, hey, you're so excited, but you have to face all these challenges. On the other hand, you're like, hey, I didn't have any of these opportunities back there, so I'm going to be exposed to all of that. So there's this little battle that's going on within you, and then
sure.
you overcome all that and you come with an open mind, and then you learn and you're successful in many areas, right? You
Right.
become successful. So that's the message that I want to kind of project. Yeah.
Yes, and in everything that you said, you gave a great example of what goes into a great story. The conflicting emotions. Think conflict. Think of what was it like to leave your country? What were the forces that were pulling at you each way, one way or the other? It's that. It's that push and pull, that tug, that conflict. That's what's going to touch people because most people have had feelings like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't had to face the prospect of leaving their country of origin,
Yeah.
but they've experienced something
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
had conflicting feelings about, oh, should I do this? Should I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, this doesn't feel great. We've all had that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So, yeah. So going forward, if I were to tell a story, my first thing that I should consider is what am I trying to convey?
Yes,
How best can I do it based on all the incidents that are that I have in mind? Pick
absolutely.
the best one. Okay. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Appreciate it.
Carol, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jimo. Now, Jim, in Toastmasters, we are taught to use gestures, body language, vocal varieties in order to give a good speech, especially in storytelling.
Mhm.
How far and how exaggerating should we be in order to tell a very good story, to express ourselves using a lot of body language, using pictures high and low? As for Toastmasters, we are very used to it. But when we speak to somebody that is out of Toastmasters, they ask me a question. Why is it that Toastmasters, when they talk, they use a lot of body language and gestures? Should we do that?
Thank you for the question. And what I would say to that is that when you're practicing your speech before the moment of truth, when you're practicing it, you can be as out there and wild as you want to be, as much as you're comfortable with. See how far you can go and just go all the way out there so you can get whatever inhibition you might feel, get it out of your system. But when you're doing the speech, you might want to read the room, find a way to read the room and have a sense of who the audience is. What do you know about your audience? And by knowing your audience, that'll sometimes give you some insight into, okay, what should I talk about? How can I best give the audience what they are looking for and what they need? So you can be guided by that. In a speech, if I'm in a speech and I've practiced it and everything, and I've done the gestures and I've gone as far as I think I can go, in the speech, I'm only going to go as far as I'm comfortable with, given my sense of the audience, what they are looking for. I may not always be accurate, but I'm going to trust my gut in that situation. And that's what I would suggest that you do. But before the speech, be wild and woolly and out there as much as you want. But when you're actually giving the speech, you have to pay attention to the dynamics. And trust your instinct as far as that goes. That'll guide you into how far you'll feel comfortable going with gestures or voices and things like that.
Thank you, Jim. You answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? Deanna has a question. What do you think? Evaluating storytelling. Is that? Elaborate storytelling, maybe elaborate storytelling.
Well, I tend to always think that in telling a story, you want to elaborate as much as possible. You want to be as vivid and as descriptive as you can be, because you want, again, it's not just about reporting what you saw, what you heard, what you did, or what you felt. You want the listener to see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, and get a feeling of doing what it is that you did. You want to take the audience into your world. And you do that by inviting the audience in with you. I think that's the best way to establish connection.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, we are at 7 p.m. This was a wonderful session, Jim. We learned a lot from your story today. And also you shared with us that we ourselves, I alone can tell my own story. And life is so powerful. Life is a powerful source of story. And and my story, there is somebody out there that will make a big impact. And thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us and really powerful words.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah. With that, I adjourn this call, but please stick around, please stay if you want to chat about this and, want to stay longer, please feel free to.
Sure.
Tapan, how was your experience today?
Thank you for asking, Jamal. This is the first time. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Jim, for your wonderful wisdom. Really appreciate that. And it was
Thank
good
you.
to know how to tell a story. And, we don't, in our professional lives, we don't think about it. But when, to put a story together, it's not easy. And I'm learning that art as well myself. So my question for you is basically, like when you meet someone, you want to kind of like tell something that that person will remember, because life is short, right? So I don't know, maybe tomorrow I'm there, not there. So how do you express yourself, I mean, to somebody whom you don't know anything, and what story, because you have a lot of things going on in your mind, right? So but how do you
Right.
capture and tell that few things that that person, like, oh, this guy, 10 years after you meet me, you'll be like, boy, this guy told me that, you'll remember that, right? So I want to know that, how that art basically.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. I think you might have said it, but I don't remember. What country are you from?
I'm originally from India.
Okay. So say we're walking down the street, we're in San Francisco or somewhere like that, right?
Right.
And we meet each other and we start talking. And I've met a lot of people from India, but I've never been to India myself. Maybe you can tell me what do you like most about India? I happen to love Indian food, and I love biryani. I've never made it myself, but it's always my goal to make biryani. I still haven't done it yet, but it's on my list. You could say something like that.
I see.
Something that most people haven't experienced. They'll remember that. Oh yeah, I remember Shah, Mr. Shah. He told me about India. Oh, Shah, India, biryani. People make associations like that, and that's how they remember. So, you can definitely do that. You can tell somebody without telling secrets that you don't want to share, but you can talk about things that you're enthusiastic about. Maybe you play a sport like I know that cricket's popular in India, and maybe that's something that most people you meet in America wouldn't have experienced. Maybe they'll remember that.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
because we like baseball and those kinds of sports, and cricket is a little bit like baseball, a little bit. So yeah, just find something that you are enthusiastic about and share that if you feel comfortable doing it.
Oh, that is very helpful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. It's giving me a lot of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jessica, how was your experience?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, because we are at 10 o'clock, so I changed the room. So I turned off my video. I love your Jim. I love your speech.
Thank you.
It's very cool. I love your gesture. I love your very confident and comfortable. And
Thank you.
I think you certainly found yourself. Yeah, I really love, and I also love your Q&A. It's so natural.
Thank you very much for coming. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marcia, how was your experience? Marcia? I'll come back to you. Krishni, how was your experience? Marcia, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is Marcia, and I just want to say, Jim, this was fantastic. You were very authentic. You were interesting. There was also some humor, and just the way that you answered the questions, it was just quite enlightening and powerful. And I just really learned so much, and it makes me think of what I'm going to use and some of the tools that you gave me to use for my future speeches. So thank you so much for being part of, for allowing me to be part of this experience.
Well, thank you, Marcia. And it means an awful lot coming from you, because I have to say, you are one of the best that we have at Freeport Hempstead Toastmasters also. And I learned just as much from you. So thank you for coming out and showing the support. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Krishni, can you hear me? Gavin, how was your experience?
Oh, yes, Jim, and hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, because I have another meeting, so I haven't turned on my video. Jim, just as I have comment in the chat box, it's very succinct, because you just told your experiences with in storytelling. You're very authentic, and the pacing was great, because I can follow you when I was listening to the workshop. I can follow you exactly. And the amazing part is, you know, I also have another meeting. When I'm back, I can still continue the flow. That's the amazing part. And I think many even experienced speakers, they are struggling to have such a flow. When you're back, you can still pick up. And I was wondering, and this may be a question, how did you make it? That means, you know, I listen to some parts, then I move to another meeting, then I'm back. I can follow you. So what's happened? The magic behind the scenes. Can you share it with us?
Well, actually, I don't think there's necessarily magic to it, but I do have to say, I have to admit, when you asked me at this time last week to do this, I've never done a presentation like this. I've never done a workshop like this. And so I spent the next full day just ruminating, like, how am I going to be able to put this thing together in a week? How? But then that lasted only for a day. And then Saturday, I started to say, look, all right, I'm going to do it. What do I want to accomplish here? What do I want to talk about? And once I got clear on thinking about what I wanted to convey, I started writing it. And it took about maybe 2 days for me to finish writing it. And I tweaked it for a couple of days. And then after that, I just used the camera on my computer to practice and to see myself giving the presentation. And so I did that several times, just so that I knew, or that I wanted to see what I could do within, say, 30 minutes, because 30 minutes can be a blessing, and 30 minutes can also be a curse if you don't think you have enough content to cover 30 minutes. I tend to sometimes go pretty long. I was in a speech contest the other night, and it was a 5 to 7 minute speech. And I'm giving my speech, and I'm thinking I'm well within my time. I pinned the timer, and the red light comes on, and I felt as though I wrapped it up within plenty of time, and then I find that I was disqualified because I went over time. So sometimes it's difficult, but once I knew what it was I wanted to convey and how I wanted to convey it, the rest was just telling the story in as relaxed a way as possible. And pacing is always a very important part of it. And one of the things that I always want to do is make sure that I'm clear. Am I being clear? Am I being complete? And am I being just being clear and being complete. Those are the two things I want to always be whenever I give a speech. And the stories I give, I want to I want to know that is this story something that could help someone else, or is it something that someone else can relate to? You always want to think of your audience. What is it that they need?
Wow.
And yeah.
Jim, I think you can write a book. So for
Thank
this
you.
work speech, you wrote it, you tweaked it, you practiced it again and again, and you consider the audience, the takeaway, many different facets of making a workshop or public speech. I think that's fantastic. I ask this question because, for instance, if a leader or teacher can gain or acquire such ability, that's amazing. Or even for parents, no matter what you're talking, maybe your children, they do not care some of the parts of your talking, but when they listen to you, they can just follow the flow. That's amazing. That's the part I call it the magic. I need to digest your information and tweak it and try to apply in my leadership.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gavin, and I want to thank you for putting me on the spot last week and asking me to do this, because, man, it's been I've had a blast, and as much as you guys have enjoyed my presentation, and I'm thrilled about that, I am so deeply moved by you, and I want to thank you guys so much too. I guess the thing that I can say in answer to your question about the pacing, just think of it as a piece of music, for example. I love jazz, for example, and my favorite instruments are the tenor saxophone and the trombone. I don't play either one, but if I did, I would think about if I were going to give a concert, and if I were going to play a song on tenor saxophone or on trombone or on piano, on any instrument, pacing would be very important to me. And just think of the kinds of music that you like most of all. If you sit and you listen to it, you'll probably find that at the beginning of a song, it might, the introduction might lead you in kind of easily, but then things build to a crescendo, maybe in the middle, later on, and then near the end, there's resolution and things start to get smooth again. I'm not an expert on classical music, but one example of that, I think, is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It seems to go like that. It has that very strong beginning, dun, 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 and then as the movements proceed, the flow's a little different.
you're frozen.
Yeah, I don't hear Jim.
To make sure that when I'm writing a speech, it fits my delivery and it fits my way, because it's my speech and it has to be done in a way that's true to me.
Wow.
Doris, go ahead.
Jim, I really enjoy your story. I think, you have told us a wonderful story, about the whole process, how you grew out of your shortcoming. And but I really like the way you broke it down, although it's a continuous story, a long story, and yet you broke it down in segments, like for joy, for love, for hope, and for fear, so no matter where we are, you have that session, so that will wrap into a segment by itself.
Sure.
That will help the audience to remember your message as well, versus a long one story.
Sure.
So that's why I really like it. You broke it down into different segments with one key point to it, so that I read your stories really stuck with me. Even after you finish, so I think that was a wonderful way to tell your story.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that my stories had that impact on you. It landed. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, it's just I guess one of the other things that I wanted to say about this whole process, it's about the audience. If you're nervous going into a speech, that's a good thing, because because it's a performance in a way. And I've gone to enough music performances and I've given enough speeches, and I used to sing too. And whenever I was nervous, I knew I was going to give a good performance, because you're reacting to the energy that you're getting from the audience. And it's good if you're nervous before a speech, because you want you want that interaction with the audience. And maybe at the first word you're nervous, but once you say the word and once you get going, you're fine. And that's what I have found. There's a rhythm to any kind of a situation like that. I can't put it into words, but you feel it. You feel it. And when you have succeeded, when you've done what it is that you've set out to do in your speech, it's basically because you did all the preparation that was necessary beforehand, so that you can have the result that you want. One other thing, your question reminds me of another thing that I think is also very important when telling stories and for speeches in general. You want your speech to become a part of you. Memorizing is one thing, and that's, there are certain parts of the speech that you want to remember. Maybe you want to remember an outline or something, but I try not to remember what I wrote word for word. I just want certain signposts, certain one-word themes that tell me where I am so I don't get lost. Because I always want to make room when I give a speech. I always want to make room for the unexpected. Maybe I see that there's an audience member who has a certain look on his or her face, a look that says, well, tell me more. Well, that's a signal to me that maybe I'm not being clear enough. So I might say something extra to bring my point home a little bit more. if there's a person in the audience who is really liking what it is I'm saying and feeling that they're into it, okay, maybe then I might give another detail to my story that I might not have thought possible. You always want to give yourself room to react to unexpected things that you might experience in your speech. There's always something that might happen. Our speeches rarely go 100% the way that we want them to. There's always something that may get in the way. It might not get in the way of you giving a good speech, but it's pretty rare that if you have 5 goals that you had for your speech, you can be sure that at least in one of those goals, you might have had to change something up a little bit in order to meet whatever goal you had. That's just the way life is. Thank you.
Wow, that's so powerful. So when it comes to, just a follow-up question. So when it comes to memorizing, you said don't memorize it, but do you have it written somewhere or?
It's written, it's definitely written. But what I mean when I say make it a part of you is that you want to be able to, when you get up from your desk and you're walking around and you're cooking breakfast and you're making dinner, try to imagine that there's somebody walking in with you, somebody who you're making that dinner for, who doesn't know what it is you're talking about. What are you going to tell that person? And how are you going to tell that person? You won't have that speech in front of you when you're talking to that person, but you want that person to know what it is you're writing. So that's what I do. I mean, I try to, as much time as I spend on writing a speech and getting it down and reading it and editing it and so forth, I always want to make time when I get up, when I walk out to the car to go somewhere, I'm narrating, and I'm trying not to rely on having the speech in front of me. And how much of it can I convey without looking at my speech? That's what you want to get to. You want to get to a point where it becomes so much a part of you that you can just talk about it to someone as if you're talking off the top of your head, but you're not really talking off the top of your head because you prepared so well before. So your preparation is going to enable you to talk about your speech as if it came off the top of your head. That's how much a part of you it is. And I think that's very important too, because that's going to come through in terms of how you appear, your comfort level with the speech. For example, if you use humor, that's going to come through. The audience might see, oh wow, this person's very comfortable, very easy to listen to, and I feel as though I'm being invited in. So it's easy for me as an audience member to connect with you or to feel you, as people say now. That's really what you want to convey. You want to let the audience know, okay, it's okay. It's okay for you to come into my world for those 5 to 7 minutes or however long my speech happens to be.
Oh, that's well said. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Roger. Roger, how's your experience? Can you hear me, Roger?
Hello.
Hey, how was your experience, Roger?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good meeting. I'll be back next week. So you meet every Thursday, is it?
Yes, every Thursday, 6 to 7. Next week is Evaluate to Motivate. So we have a presentation next week, and we are going to have a test speaker, and it is going to be fun. We'll be learning how to evaluate from our past district evaluation contest winner, and we all get to learn the technique that she uses and also be able to apply and hear a test speaker. So yes, please come back next week. Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
what did
Roger.
So
And-
I'll be back next week then. Okay.
Roger, what
Thank
is the takeaway for you from this meeting?
Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a very good meeting. Yeah. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Hazel, how's your experience?
Hello, thanks for having me. It was refreshing to hear Jim's speech. Actually, I had a very tiring day and a headache, and it's gone now. And I came in and hearing James' journey from birth to the high school experience, we all shared with you when you shot that goal, and dealing with what you deal with and sharing it with us in such an authentic way. We felt the message coming through. We felt the excitement of which you spoke about. And I like the tips or the pointers you gave. It sort of reminded me one time I had a friend who cooked a dish. She never cooked it before, and it was some strange vegetable. And she brought it to a potluck situation, and nobody ate it. And she said, I didn't want to take it home because I don't even like this vegetable. And I get from what you're saying is to make the speech part of you, personalize it, get excited about it, kind of eat it, taste it, and then you can share the flavors and the texture and everything with the audience as well. And thinking of the end result of what you want to convey, because I think in life, what we do to help others is more meaningful, understanding the why behind it. Why are we giving this speech? It's not to spot out knowledge, but how it's going to help someone. And you said, even if it helped one person, you have accomplished that. And you gave us the skills that we can apply in telling the story. I know someone mentioned gestures, and you mentioned your voice, and we heard the excitement and the passion of which you spoke. So I think it's a lot. For me, it was refreshing, like I said, to come home and listen and just sit. I mean, I was planning on going to bed. 10:30 here in New York, but I am glad I was invited to share in it. So my takeaway was a lot. I listened to National Public Radio. You mentioned it at one time, and great stories. So I kind of see how I can use different aspects to tell a personal story in an authentic way with a message to help someone. From some aspect of my life, I'm thinking about my work experience. What makes someone a good worker? What made me a good worker? Coming to work on time, working, sit out of people's business,
Sure.
How you can build on that with tips specifically to help someone to be more successful at their job, no matter what their profession is.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hazel. Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you, Hazel. That was excellent. Yeah, thank you for using that analogy of the food. Taste it first and share it with others. And then, yeah, that was awesome. Yes. Anybody else? I see Deanna has raised her hand. I know she has been raising her hand. Okay, Deanna, go ahead. Okay, let's see your message. Oh, Jim engaged because I like Jim's story about his life. Oh, Jim's speech was engaging, and I like Jim's story about his life.
Thank you, Deanna. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Pleasure having you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to say or just comments, feedbacks?
Kamal and Jim,
Yes.
Vivian here. You're probably going to be the first on that side of the world to realize this. I'm PWD deaf. I was not born deaf, but I had an accident in 1988, which impaired my hearing. And that is why I tell people, please, please, please do not memorize, because I see you looking at the ceiling, at the floor, at your fingernails when you can't remember. I tell people, just be real, because I'm reading your face. I am reading your authenticity. So I tell them, please understand that there are people like me. We have to read you so we can hear your story better and understand what your message is. So thank you for giving me the courage to say this. Just think, I'm a public speaker by profession and I'm legally deaf. So may I inspire everyone? What's their excuse? If a deaf person can become a broadcaster, anything's possible. So thank you, Jim, for touching my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you.
Thank you so much, Vivian, for your enthusiasm. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we have to talk some more. We definitely have to talk some more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, for sharing with us. And I now get the reason why it's so important to prepare and be able to talk. And you're right. Sometimes when we're thinking, we're looking up nails, and that is the beauty about Toastmasters is we get people from all around the world and from all walks of life, and feedback like this and personal stories like this help us to become better. And we learn each and every single meeting and grow as a result. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And let's see. Deanna has a question. Is your question, when do you think I can tell my life story? When do you think I can tell my life story?
Well, I think it's probably something that you can work on every day. I don't know how well. Have you given speeches in Toastmasters before? Have you written speeches before? And written them out and shared them with people? You know, this might be a good time to start if you haven't done that yet, because I'm sure you have a lot that you can share with people too, experiences that you can talk about, that you know a lot about, that move you, that you're passionate about, something that you really believe in and that touches you somehow. Those are the kinds of stories that are the best, because they reflect you the best. So just think about what it is and why it is you come to Toastmasters meetings. What do you want to take away from the Toastmasters meetings? And then maybe write something about, oh, well, this meeting, I came away from this meeting feeling X or feeling Y. And, you might want to think of a speech that you might want to write. I'm sure there are a couple that you might be thinking about. Let yourself think about it, and don't stop yourself from writing it. By all means, just dive in.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion and recommendation. Yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? We meet again next Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m. and it's going to be even more fun. We have learnings throughout. So the next one is going to be Evaluate to Motivate, where we learn how to evaluate effectively and how to evaluate in such a way that we are motivating the speaker. And we are going to learn some tips and tricks and secrets, and please do come. Gavin, do you want to add anything?
Oh yeah, thank you, Jimo, for the workshop next week, right?
Yes.
Okay, Elaine Long. She is one of the best storyteller. She is one of the best evaluator. She is one of the most supportive spirits in District 101. Trust me, when you listen to her speeches, when you engage in her workshop, you just feel kind of a spirit just speaking in your heart. That's very powerful, effective. I believe for the next workshop, Evaluate to Motivate, you will feel, you will experience what the real evaluation is, how to do it, and at the end of the day, how to give effective, efficacious, yeah, that's a better word, efficacious, not just effective, but evaluation with efficacious output. And that's the powerful, the wonderful part. So just join us, and it will be one of the best workshops ever. I believe in our club, one of the best ever for this year, maybe in the following 10 years. So I invite you to join us next Thursday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And we will have fun. Hey, yeah, Jimo.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Today was also great learnings, great takeaways. And Jim, this is really best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you led by example. You shared with me, with all of us, with me and to all of us, how to tell a story. Yeah, so that was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question before we adjourn. For my own progress, will I be able to listen back to the speech and kind of maybe just for future reference?
Yes. Yes. So we do have a, I will definitely share with you the recording. We do have a YouTube channel. So it's recorded and it'll be posted over there. Yes, I'll definitely share with you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you,
Deanna.
Wow, Jim.